You know what is the most progressive solution to almost every single problem? Ban people from talking about it. It works every single time. Like, for instance, if people feel unsafe from actually going outside, instead of investing money and resources into tackling crime, paying police officers, into making sure that people are safe, what you can do is to ban people from talking about it. Because that way they don't blame the politicians, that way they don't vote differently, that way they don't get change, and that way you can also use the new draconic legislation to prevent people from talking about it to also crack down on your political opponents and political dissidents. It's for the common good. So we have this lady here in Ireland, which is saying something that would have gotten her into a lot of trouble here in Eastern Europe. But for some reason, if you're in the much more advanced and forward-thinking nation of Ireland, you can get away with actually saying stuff that a couple of decades ago would have been viewed as fascismus. Like, there were books that were written on the subject, books that made the phrase the greater good as something chilling. Like something that you can do almost in the name of, which is the greater good. So let's see what she says as she is proposing some of the most draconic legislation that I have seen around the world. In fact, I'll probably make a video tomorrow, so just we can go through it and you guys can see and compare it with your country. Regardless of what it is, even if you're from California, you will find that this legislation is so many years ahead. I think like even China would benefit from this wisdom. Like if you're a Chinese person in Ireland and this legislation passes, you would actually find more free speech back in China than you're going to have in Ireland under this legislation. Again, like if the bill passes in the way they are proposing. So let's listen to this lady.
When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing...
That's not true, though. Not all legislation is meant to restrict freedom. Like the American Constitution isn't there to restrict freedom. You can have a legislation that, for example, reduces taxation. But such a thing is now so unthinkable into the mind of modern left-leaning politicians from around the world that they literally view like, yes, all legislation is there to restrict freedom. And to be honest, this is actually the European Union's way of thought, because I was actually speaking with some friends and I was saying like, can you name me a legislation from the European Union that came out within the last 5 years that actually gave me something that's actually like literally beneficial for me? And they couldn't. But it wasn't always like this. Like, for instance, the legislation that allows people to go from Germany to Romania without having a passport, that gives you freedom. So you can actually have legislation that gives freedom to people. But here you have a politician that says, no, like all legislation is to remove freedoms.
Doing it for the... When you think about it, all law, all legislation is about the restriction of freedom. That's exactly what we're doing here, is we are restricting freedom, but we're doing it for the common good. You will see throughout our...
I am curious if any tyrant throughout human history said that they are doing what they are doing for the common evil. Like, no, seriously, think about it, right? Like think about the worst leaders that you can possibly imagine. Did they say that what they are doing isn't for the common good? I mean, even Hitler was saying when he was passing legislation that it's good for the German people. But most modern politicians, at least the ones after World War II, that didn't want to be like the Nazis, they would say, no, like, we are championing freedom, we want people to live in prosperity, they wanted to protect human rights. I mean, the idea of a government is to actually protect human rights. Like, if I have a business, I want the government to protect my business so that I don't have criminals breaking into my store. If I have the need for transportation, I want the government to make sure that I can safely take a train and get to where I want to be without getting injured. Right? Like, that theoretically is the role of the government. But apparently now, Again, like the mainstream way of thought in Ireland is that no, the role of the government is to restrict freedoms for the greater good. It's just
Constitution. Yes, you have rights, but they are restricted for the common good.
in other words, you don't have rights. Like if you have a right, it can't be restricted for the common good. You either have it or you don't. This idea where you have rights, but at any point they can be taken away by the government, I don't think that's a free country. I mean, sure, like maybe in some phenomenal exception, like there's a war, maybe a nasty calamity. But we're not talking about this in Ireland.
Everything needs to be balanced. And if your views on other people's identities go to make their lives unsafe, insecure, and cause them such deep discomfort that they cannot live in peace, then I believe that it is our job as legislators to restrict those freedoms for the common good.
So just so you know, what is happening in Ireland is that there was a brutal murder on women and children. A brutal attack, on women and kids. And the response of the politician is to prevent people from talking about it because it's dangerous for the politicians. It's not because they care about the minorities, because as far as I know, no one got injured over it. No, but the fact that people are now protesting and organizing, they're scared that what happened in Netherlands or what happened in other countries where right-wingers have managed to gain support, or as you can see in Germany, the AfD is gaining support. That's what terrifies them. They don't give a shit about minorities or anything like that. They don't care. I mean, they literally don't even care about the common people. If they care, none of that would happen. I mean, look, how does Eastern Europe, and we're talking about Hungary, Romania, Bulgaria, like all these other nations in Eastern Europe, do not have the problems that Ireland has? We do not need for legislation that restricts rights at such levels like Ireland is planning to restrict. We do not have need for all this type of legislation. And on top of that, women can walk the streets safely. Children can walk the streets safely. I mean, sure, crime does happen every now and then, like in every other place, but it's not so brutal to the point that it makes international news. And when it does happen, at least the politicians start addressing it. And they're like, okay, well, what changes can we make so that we prevent it from happening in the future? It seems in Ireland, however, it's like, okay, well, what changes can we make so people stop talking about it? I'm Romanian and I'm outraged. It's not necessarily that I'm outraged. I'm just like thanking Jesus every single day that I don't have these types of politicians blessing me. They're not in the European Union, are they? Oh, thank God they're not. Jesus. Can you imagine if Ireland was in the EU and they would send representatives over there to make laws in my country? Holy shit. Let me know what you guys think. And as usual, I will see you in the comment section. Take care.